Hey guys, welcome to a old and new segment of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, I'm bringing it back from the dead. My motivation was my review actually on this guy right here, Burberry Weekend, just recently. And I was looking at the bottles together. I'm like, you know what? Let's do the good, the bad, and the ugly on the Burberry House. So yes, it is finally reintroduced. I will be doing other fragrance houses. We're going to start it off with Burberry. Now I put them actually in order of my preference. Now this is my personal choice. Doesn't mean this fragrance is worse than this one. But this is my number one from the fragrance house right up to the last one. Now this is not the whole Burberry fragrance lineup for men. This is just the bottles I own. I am welcoming comments below if you wish to do so to let me know, you know what, you're missing this one from the Burberry House or that one. Let me know which ones you think are jewels. You can also pitch in the comments below and say which ones you think are great or the worst from the house. So if you're a new subscriber, the good, and bad, and the ugly is basically me taking a look at the whole house as a whole, let you guys know which ones are great to look at and the worst. So let's get to it. Let's delve into the Burberry House. Now Burberry, of course, comes from the UK. Their main source of income, of course, is their fashion label. Their website, if you want to purchase any of their fragrances, is of course Burberry.com. They are available worldwide. Most of their fragrances are available in a lot of stores worldwide. You won't have a problem finding fragrances from this house worldwide. No problems there. Now Burberry does have a parent company. What is a parent company? It's a company that actually owns the right to the Burberry fragrance lineup. So Interperfume actually purchased Burberry's name and the right to distribute these fragrances for Burberry. They also own Gap, Montblanc, Paul Smith. So Interperfume, their bread and butter I would really think is the Burberry House, to be honest. These other fragrance houses really don't sell that much. So Burberry is probably their jewel. Now Burberry is actually known for trench coats. That's what their name came out of mostly. That's what they were selling. Now they're selling like leather goods and watches and all that. They're all over the place. And the brand's unique, of course. Tartan pattern, which is of course this pattern right here that you see on Burberry Brit. You see it on most of their fragrances. That pattern right there, that plaid as they call it, this tartan pattern from Burberry. Now Burberry started making fragrances for men back in 1981, so they're fairly new to the fragrance game. They released Burberry for Men, the original. They didn't get great sales from that guy. They really didn't release anything else. And they kind of gave up on the game in the 80s. That was their only release in the 80s. Then Inter came in and purchased the Burberry name back in 93. And Inter didn't waste any time. They released a new Burberry for Men back in 95, which is this guy right here. The old one will be really hard for you guys to find. You'd have to purchase it online. I believe it was discontinued. Not too sure. But this is the new Burberry for Men that Inter released in 95. Which the sales were okay. I wouldn't say they were mediocre, but they were pretty good. And this fragrance right here still has kind of like a cult following with Burberry for Men. I know a lot of gentlemen that absolutely love this fragrance from the House of Burberry. Now in the 90s they were very quiet. That's the only one they actually released in the 90s. They really hit their stride in the fragrance game for men only recently in the 2000s with the release of course, Touch, Brit, and London. That trio really uplifted the Burberry name in the men's section as a solid fragrance house. I wouldn't say they're top tier, but they're definitely solid and their name is out there. They do have men's and women's fragrances alike. Usually they release them as a man and women pair. So there is a Burberry London for women, Burberry Brit, Touch, same thing, you get it. They have over 40 fragrances available to the public. They have a solid range of fragrances available for men. So they really have a wide array of fragrances from the classic, which I believe is this one, to the bold, which is more like this guy, London, and the Beat, and to the unisex, which is really Touch and Brit, and to the Fresh, which comes up with Weekend and Burberry Sport. So they really do hit every type of stride. Now the knock on the Burberry House is longevity. Most of their fragrances aren't longevity beasts, and originality. I really think that they are lacking in originality. So those are the kind of the knocks on this fragrance house. Now let's get to the good and the bad and the ugly. Now this is where I go from the good to the worst. Let's go. Now the most sold and the most talked about from the fragrance house has to be these two guys right here, London and Brit. Usually most people just check out these two fragrances from them. They're highly touted in base notes and Fragrantica in our YouTube community. These are the two that most people just check out. I think this is the flagship for men, Brit, to be honest with you, but both equally talked about online. My personal favorite, again, as you can see in the #1 spot, is Burberry London. I really feel like it does have some shortcomings like longevity, and it can smell like a Christmas tree, but I absolutely love it near Thanksgiving, November and December. This is a great fragrance to have. So it is my favorite, my personal favorite. The most underrated from the house, in my personal opinion, I think is this guy right here, Burberry Touch. I really feel a lot of people just check out these two and then move on, and they kind of forget that this guy is actually a really solid third fiddle in the Burberry house. So if you've only checked out these two, check out Touch and check out the Beat if you kind of like pepper, but it's more than a pepper bomb. Most overrated, I had to pick one, sadly, is going to be the Beat. I feel like I like it, don't get me wrong, I had to pick one. The Beat is the one that a lot of people overrate. They say it's absolutely gorgeous. They're trying to say that it's not just a pepper bomb. Well, if you don't like pepper, this opening is going to get you. So I believe it's the most overrated. You can say that this one's the most overrated because it's talked about, or this one because it's powdery, but to me it's the Beat. The worst from the fragrance house. From what I own, of course it's the last guy right here, Burberry Sport. Just didn't do it for me. The worst from the fragrance house would have to be Burberry Sport. The Classic, this is a new thing that I'm adding to the good, the bad, and the ugly. The Classic, what does that mean? The fragrance that is almost timeless, or something that older gentlemen would wear. The Classic for the Burberry house would have to be Burberry for men. I really think this is the classic fragrance from the house, and this is where it actually kind of really started. The new kid on the block. This is a new one, again, another new feature. The new kid on the block for these fragrances is, of course, this guy, Burberry Sport. It's not the newest fragrance they've released. They've released a bunch of flankers after this one. I think there's an icy version of this. But this is the new kid on the block, and I really hope this is not the future of Burberry. They were doing well in the mid-90s. Hopefully they go back to these kind of recipes instead of this guy right here. Best flanker. The best flanker, I don't own any flankers of the Burberry house. If I had to name one, is some that I actually sniffed out when I'm overseas, and it's the Burberry summer editions. I really feel like the summer editions of this fragrance right here is absolutely, some of them are stunning and I have to get my hands on them, but the summer editions would be the best flanker of this line. And the rest, the middle of the road. The middle of the road fragrance would have to be Weekend. Personally, not great enough to handle with these guys, the top 5. And it's just not mediocre enough to be hanging out with this guy. I really think it's a middle of the road fragrance for me, Burberry Weekend. Again, I just want to put a note in that I did say this was the only one released in the 90s. I am wrong. Weekend just released it. I just had a brain fart. This was also released in the 90s, so there's 2 fragrances released in the 90s. So this is my good, the bad, and the ugly from the House of Burberry. Again, always comment below. Let me know which fragrances I'm missing from the Burberry house. It's always appreciated if you feel that I'm missing any. And do your own good and bad and the ugly. Tell me which ones you think are the best to the worst. Thanks for watching, guys.